Greenye Berhad is an investment holding company which the company operates through two segments, plantation products and non-plantation products. The graph shown a price stock of Greenye company. In the month of January, the price stock was not changed significantly, which it increased and decreased repeatedly until end of January. Meanwhile, during February, the price stock was increased positively with a small movement. Then, in March, the graph showed an increase and decrease repeatedly among the months, and when April came, the graph was still in the same condition, but it is more slower than March. But at the end of April, the price stock is slightly increased. The change of price stock happened in 4 months because of the market force. This graph indicates the stock return for Greenye company. In January, the stock return was increased and decreased repeatedly, but there are a consistent movement in the graph from 15 to 25 January. Meanwhile, along February and March, the graph was repeatedly rising and dropping, but there was some consistent movement in 8 March. During entering the April, there was a horizontal movement, and on April, the stock return was increased and decreased until in the end of April. The graph shows a standard deviation for Greenye Berhad company. The stock was increased from January 2.34% to February 5.11%. But in March and April, the stock was decreased significantly from 4.44% to 2.77%. Meanwhile, for market, the graph was decreased gradually from January until April. The standard deviation can never be negative because of the technique used to calculate it, and the way it's calculated distance, which can never be negative. The graph is showing the beta value for Greenye company in 4 months. The value of beta was increased from January 87.47% to February 278.08%. And then it decreased to 219.15% in March, but in April the graph was rise again into 283.86%. To conclude, the beta coefficient is controlled by a number of factors, including individual stock return to variable, market return variable, and the relationship between security and market returns. CAB Cakaran Corporation Berhad is one of the largest food producers in Malaysia and is listed on the main board of Bursa Malaysia. This graph shows the price stock of CAB Cakaran Corporation Company. In 4 January until 11 January, the price stock was marked decrease, but after that, it increased slightly and decreased again steadily until 25 January. In the next month, the stock price showed a marginal movement during early February until mid-February, and the graph significantly increased to 22 February. Meanwhile, in March and April, the graph only showed a gradual improvement, but there is expected to be a slight increase when it comes in the end of April. The graph indicates the stock return in CAB Cakaran Berhad Company on 4 months. During January, the graph indicates a sharp dropping and it increased sharply in repeat until 25 of January. The stock return in February also showed the same movement with January. There has been a dramatically increase and decrease during that month. Next, along early of March until end of March, there were a considerable increase and decrease on the stock return. Meanwhile, the same movement also happened in month of April, which are the occurrence of significant stock return movement in up and downs during that month. The chart line shows the standard deviation for CAB Cakaran Corporation Berhad for 4 months. The stock showed a small increase from January 3.82% to February 3.86%, and then there was a highly decrease to 3.12% in March, but in April the stock was maintained at 3.12%. Meanwhile, for market, there has been a significant decrease from January until April, which are in a 4 months. In specific case, when the outcomes are limited, such as product production and product quality, a modest standard deviation might be a goal. Next, the graph shows a beta value for CAB Cakaran Corporation Berhad Company in 4 months. The value of beta indicate a highly decrease from January 314.83% to February negative 184.07%. But entering March, the graph has increased to 58.64%, but in April, the value of beta was dropped again to 13.72%.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Mimi Amira. My matric number is 050874. Today, I'm going to talk about the company that I have researched, which is Leng Hong Berhad. Leng Hong Berhad is a public limited company listed on the main market of Bursa Malaysia on the 20 October 1994. This company core business activity are the mass production of basic daily necessity, fresh table and specialty chicken eggs, liquid egg, chill and whatnot. This company also contract pack specialist chicken cuts and chicken related products for certain fast food chains. So this is the graph of the price stock Leng Hong Berhad. The price stock of Leng Hong Berhad on 4 January to 7 January 2021, it's declined subsequently but grew back to 12 January 2021. From January 15 to March 3, the line in the graph remained unchanged, but then it fell sharply to 16 March. The chart line remained the same until 29 March. The stock price changed every day due to market force. If more people are prepared to buy, which is demand, the price will increase rather than sell supply. Conversely, the supply is larger than demand, and if more people want to sell their stock than to buy them, the price will be lower. This is the graph of stock return Leng Hong Berhad. In January 4 to January 7, show poor performance. Then to January 12, it increased markedly. The graph indicates a decline on the next day, which takes place until 27 April in this fluctuation process. Investors move out of their bonds in search of better equity rates when the line is increased. The increases demand for stock and increases stock price relative to profits. When the interest rates are high and the mean value for money contracts, investors move out of stock to bonds. In the meantime, the line declined due to low interest rate, poor economic growth and stock estimate, small interest rate, lower inflation has an impact on return. Standard deviations help to determine market volatility or the average price spreads of asset. When price widely move, there is a high default deviation, so that an investment is dangerous. Low standard deviation means prices are calm and investment risk is low. In this graph, the inventory fell dramatically in February from 3.06% to 1.81%. The stock then increased back to March, which is 2.25%, and in April fell to 1.92%. The market decreased slightly in January from 0.72% to 0.58% in February. Then it grew somewhat to 0.72% until April, which is 0.71%. This is the graph of beta Leng Hong Berhad. The figures show 76.9% in January and decreased sharply in February by negative 29.8% and decreased further by negative 30.7% in the following month. However, the standard deviation market percentage increased by 54.9%. The variance in the data set is higher if the values are longer than the mean. The higher the default, the higher the data is distributed. The standard deviation returns a low volatility value when prices are traded in the narrow trade range. The stock price at LTKM Berhad show very little change. From January 4 to April 27, 2021, almost all stocks remain the same. Some people continue to teach the effective market hypothesis, but market conditions have been shown to be overreactive and not always rational. An imperfect but straightforward way of seeing the shifting of market perceptions of a company is a comparison of earning change per share and share price change. The graph LTKM Berhad, the diagram show begin from January onwards and with a 15% reliability. The horizontal reading then fell sharply to negative levels. The LTKM Berhad stock return between positive and negative return fluctuate during the remaining 4 months. The process is growing as investors move from their bonds to look for better stock rate. This increased demand for stocks and increased stock price relative to profits. Low interest rates, moreover, are expected to benefit earnings and investors expect future earnings to increase. This is the graph of standard deviation in LTKM Berhad. The standard deviation chart for LTKM Berhad shows that the stock decreased from 4.50% in January to 1.65% in February. In March, the inventory then rose to 3.33% and slowly rose to 3.37% until April. The graph shows a slight decrease percentage in the market from January to April, which is 0.72%, 0.58%, 0.51%, and 0.41%. Last but not least, the graph of beta in LTKM Berhad. The figure above shows that the beta percentage of the LTKM Berhad company increased to 141.80% in February by 140.77% in January. In March, however, this figure drops dramatically, which amounts to 138.88% and is up to 141.68% by April.
Price stock of BWF Consolidated Berhad slightly increased from 1st February 2021 till 12 April 2021. The stock price is set for each share of stock issued by a publicly traded corporation. The price reflects the firm's worth which the public is ready to pay for a stake in the firm. It may and will increase and fall in response to a multitude of events in the global marketplace as well as inside the firm itself. Stock price fluctuates due to supply and demand. The greater the intensity of interest in a stock, the more bids are drawn to it, and the less interested present shareholders are in selling their own stock. As a result, potential purchasers must bid higher in order to purchase the shares and the stock price rises. Based on the graph above, BWF Consolidated Berhad has a negative effect in the future. This is because the opposite relationship can occur because the higher the exchange rate is feared to reduce net income. A negative return is a financial loss resulting from an investment in a project, a business, a stock, or other financial instruments. When total cost exceeds entire revenues, business face negative returns. Firms at the initial stage of the business life cycles are more prone to face negative returns. The standard deviation is used to calculate market volatility and risk in the context of stock returns and investments. A riskier stock will have a more volatile price and a wider range. The standard deviation for this company shows an increasing trend from January until March. The average increases is about 2.38%. When the largest term increases by 1, it gets farther from the mean. Thus, the average distance from the mean gets bigger, so the standard deviation increases. Beta is a ratio that measures the risk of a company's share price compared to the market as a whole.
BWF consolidated Berhad showed that it had started with a high value of beta in January at 1.09 and decreased to negative 2.54 in April. It indicates that the company's value grows and decreases in direct proportion to the performance of the benchmark index. The beta value of BWF consolidated Berhad then continuously decreased to negative 2.54. Therefore, if a stock always falls 10% while the market is rising 10%, a company would have a negative beta of 1 because it falls by the same amount than the market rise. Ronema Holdings Berhad showed that the stock price is decreasing from 25 January 2021 till 26 April 2021. This indicates that stock price fluctuates on a daily basis due to market factors. When more individuals desire to purchase a stock, which is demand, then sell it, which is supply, the price rises. If more individuals wanted to sell a stock than acquire it, there would be more supply than demand and the price would decrease. Based on the result of the study, Ronema Holdings Berhad had a positive effect for January till 25 January, but it slightly decreased in the first half of February. Stock returns represent the collective knowledge of millions of buyers and sellers, causing price to shift up or down in real time in order to generate good predicted returns in the future. While there is no guarantee that these returns will be realized historically, the market has gone up more often than it goes down. The way to increase the chance of realizing a positive return in the stock market is to invest over a long time horizon. Investors should legitimately anticipate an index fund to have a low standard deviation when it comes to investing, because the entire aim of an index fund is to match the index. The standard deviation above start 2.96% in January and decreased to 0.47% in February, but slightly increased in March with 5.34%. A high standard deviation means that values are generally far from the mean, while a low standard deviation indicates that values are clustered close to the mean. The chart above has shown that the Ronema Holdings Berhad got under 1.0 in January. This means that the stock moved less than the market because the stock's beta is less than 1.0. It indicates a stock with lower volatility. In February, this company then got greater than 1.0 at 1.43, which means that the stock is more volatile than the broader market. High beta stocks are supposed to be riskier but provide higher return potential, but low beta stocks pose less risk but also lower returns. However, the value of beta in March decreased to negative 0.74, indicating then that an inverse relation to the market is possible, but highly unlikely. Some investors argue that gold and gold stock should have negative betas because they tend to do better when the stock market declines. Beta is probably a better indicator of short-term rather than long-term risk.
Assalamualaikum, I am Norshada binti Abdullah with metric number 050879. So for the first company is TPC Plus Berhad. TPC Plus Berhad is a Malaysian-based investment holding company. It is engaged in the provision of management service, which is under poultry farming. So TPC Plus is the company that focus on producing and providing a range of table egg to all consumer. They are a grader, a packer, a marketer and distributor of shell egg in Malaysia. So let's take a look at a price chart of this TPC Plus. If you can see, the price stock of TPC Plus has shown a slightly fluctuating line in the graph, but then it did not decrease over the time. This is indicate that the price of stock trading of TPC Plus has a stable responsiveness from investor. So the price of stock is determined by the supply and demand, and if there is a high demand, so the line will increase, and if there is a low demand, it will decrease. So and a stock price are also determined by the stock bids and ask price, and the price change if there is a change in the buy or sell offer of the share. As we know, stock return is the calculation percent rate of return over a measurement period. And for the TPC Plus Berhad, their stock return start with a negative number, which is negative 70.19%. The negative number of stock return indicate a loss to the investor. This might be because of TPC Plus generate less dividend and interest payment at the end of year 2020. And the chart then show that it rose back, but unfortunately still in negative range of number. And for the rest of period within the 4 months, TPC Plus Berhad stock return shown a fluctuate line in between positive return and negative return respectively. TPC Plus Berhad standard deviation of stock start with a high number of percentage in January, which is 4.51%. Any number standard deviation above 2% indicate the high value of standard deviation, and high value of standard deviation show a high volatility. The more a stock's return vary from the stock average return, the more volatile the stock. And it is indicating that widely TPC Plus Berhad stock price are dispersed from average price. Start from January to April, the TPC Plus Berhad got a high number of beta, which is above 1.0, and it is indicate that the stock swing more to the market over time. It shown a high beta stock, which is high responsiveness of stocks market to the change of overall stock market. High beta stocks are commonly riskier, however, they provide a high return potential. The next company is Tiosan Capital Berhad, which is engaged in a business of investment holding and provision of management service. So this company is operate through 3 segments, which is the first one is investment holding, the second is trading of pet food, and the last one is poultry farming. This company is also the provider of egg in Malaysia. So let's take a look at the price stock of Tiosan Capital Berhad. The price stock of Tiosan Capital start with a good price of 89 cents, but then greatly fell to 77 cents in just a few days. But then the price of stock is commonly seen to fluctuate depending on how highly the investor is interested to buy share in the company. After that, the price stock of Tiosan Capital then continuously show a common or usually fluctuating line over the time within the 4 months. It just rise and fall respectively depending to the responsiveness of investor. Stock return Tiosan Capital shown an aggressive fluctuating line. It is indicate to a possibility of total return of the company that not fixed to the profit. Tiosan Capital stock return start with a negative number of return before it rose back to the profit at the quarters of January. Usually, stock return can be measured by return of equity (ROE), but since ROE of Tiosan Capital is 0.48 right now, it means that the negative return of the company is not caused by ROE. For the standard deviation Tiosan Capital, The stock value lies within the range of 1.93% to 2.00%. And a low standard deviation means that the data is very closely related to the average. Thus, it is very reliable. And a high standard deviation, that means that there is a large variance between the data and statistical average, and it is not reliable. Since high value of standard deviation, which is above 2%, indicate a high volatility of stock, then it may Thiosan capitalize in between high and low, which is indicate a normal stock standard deviation. For beta Thiosan capital, only March got above 1.0, which is 1.02. The rest of the three, January, February, and April, all of the 3 months got the number below of 1.0, which is January 0.6, February 0.71, and April 0.8. A low beta stock indicate that the stock market is low in responsiveness of investor. Since Thiosan Capital show that their beta is low, and low beta stock pose less risk but also a lower return potential.